Hello and welcome to The Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the collection for the 2008 story, Amazing Spider-Man: Kraven's First Hunt, from Marvel Comics. It all started with Kraven the Hunter. Kraven first appeared in 1964 for the 15th issue of the first ever Amazing Spider-Man run, where his good friend the Chameleon invited him to America in order to hunt the ultimate game, Spider-Man. He would then almost immediately reappear as part of the first Sinister Six in the first ever Spider-Man annual. A lot of firsts here. Kraven's popularity over the following years is probably debatable, but he would reappear from time to time until writer J.M. DeMatteis truly immortalized him, ironically by killing him off in the seminal Kraven's Last Hunt. The success of Last Hunt, if nothing else, would lead to an ever-expanding family for Kraven crawling out of the woodwork in order to continue his life's work. Like his eldest son, the Grim Hunter, or a second son who also took on the mantle of Kraven the Hunter in order to follow in his father's footsteps. With the advent of Brand New Day, the event story I covered in my last video, serving as a soft reset of the Spider-Man universe, the chance arose to tell further stories around classic Spider villains. After all, we'd already seen that B&D revived the long-dead Harry Osborn, so why not Kraven the Hunter? So we have today's story, titled Kraven's First Hunt in homage to that immortal story. But that's not the only way this story will reflect that classic. So let's see what kind of light this brand new day shines on that old tale, and take this away. The comic opens on Spider-Man chasing down Overdrive. This first issue, while part of the collection, even lending its cover to the collection cover, isn't actually part of the main story. But I guess since Kraven's First Hunt is only a 3-parter, and the story following that will be a 6-parter, they decided to bundle this in here. And while I did talk about this story some in my previous video, I guess it's still worth covering some here. This first story is told a bit disjointedly, covering the events from 3 different viewpoints. Hence, the name. Starting with Spidey's, moving on to Officer Vin Gonzalez, and finally on to Overdrive himself for the recap. Overdrive has been tasked by his boss, Mr. Negative, to recover something from some science startup, a weird kind of stun gun thing. Overdrive had crashed the lab and recovered the device, but on his way out, ran across Spider-Man. Spider-Man's attempts to stop him reveals to us Overdrive's ability to soup up any vehicle, even a school bus. Guess they should have called him Exhibit. Spidey makes rescuing the kids on the bus a priority, creating a giant web bag to cram them into and throw them out the back. Not entirely sure how that was supposed to be a good idea, but more importantly, while maybe nobody says cowabunga anymore, by 2008, I'm pretty sure nobody was saying the bomb either. But I don't see anyone yelling at that kid. First of all, it's not the bomb, it's da bomb. Get that much right at least. But also by 2008, I'm pretty sure they'd be saying Spidey is crunk or Spidey is lit or something like that. Get with it, grandpas. Overdrive uses the distraction to vanish, though that includes ditching the stun gun thing with Spidey, which Mr. Mr. Negative, is not very happy about. Vin Gonzalez is also unhappy about being pulled into these events, seeing as he was supposed to go with his pops to see a game at Yankee Stadium. That's okay though, I'm pretty sure he didn't miss much. Ooh, shots fired, I guess. Vin was already in a bad mood that day because he learned that morning that his new roommate, one Peter Benjamin Parker, might not be able to pay his rent after getting fired from his job at the DB. This happened after Peter finally realized how damaging being a paparazzi could be to people and told Dexter Bennett to shove it, resulting in Peter ending up on Bennett's shit list. That further resulted in Peter being unable to get a job at any other newspaper in the city, as they didn't want to incur Bennett's wrath. But Spidey, Overdrive, and Vin will all also end up on Bennett's list after the events of this story, when they all almost run down Bennett on accident as he's walking around the city trying to read his own paper for some reason. He's a weird guy. With that story out of the way, we move on to our main focus, which opens on Spider-Man teaming up with Daredevil to stop a supervillain named Fracture, who, fun fact, was actually created by the writer of this story, Mark Guggenheim, as a disposable villain for Spidey to face in an earlier Blade comic book a year before this. Circles. Because the real villain here isn't Fracture, obviously, but instead a mysterious figure who is watching Spider-Man while he fights, and follows him home to his shared apartment with Vin, though Spidey's spider sense is warning him enough of the mysterious presence to not give away his exact location. But our as-yet unnamed figure learns enough to narrow down the apartment, and from there finds the name on the lease, and from there begins to look into Peter Parker. Peter, meanwhile, in his continued efforts to find employment, takes a job with a local comic shop, where we get a bit of a meta joke about how there's no way some unnamed comic is going to actually release 3 times a month. They also make the claim that Peter isn't a comic reader, which doesn't feel right to me. I feel like he's been established as keeping a comic book collection in his youth, but I guess I don't have the receipts to prove it, so fine? Someone, well, our still mysterious young lady, starts attempting to snipe Peter, who is then forced to reveal his powers to his coworker in order to save the man's life. In order to throw the guy off his trail though, he convinces his co-worker that he's actually a Skrull in disguise. But as bad as nearly getting shot is, Pete's roommate Vin has it even worse. He gets suspended from his job when his personal firearm is used to gun down a drug dealer. He nearly gets run over by a car, and someone steals his ATM number and steals all of his life savings. Even Harry hasn't escaped this run of supposedly bad luck, with someone seeming to target the Coffee Bean, the coffee shop that Harry bought upon his return to New York that serves as a recurring hangout spot for our characters. But now he's being hit with a bunch of reports of health code violations. I mean, I heard a goblin is brewing coffee there. A nasty, nasty green one. It is, of course, our mysterious enemy that has been causing all this grief as she attempts to destroy the life of Spider-Man and all his friends. At this point, she finally decides she's done enough and makes her move, attacking Spidey at home, getting him to put on his costume, knocking him out, and chaining him up down in the sewers. Only, it turns out, she got the wrong guy. As this whole time, she's apparently been thinking that Vin is Spidey, not Pete. Whoopsie! She's brought Spider-Vin down to the sewers in the hopes of repeating some of the events of Kraven's last hunt, though she must have received her info on that story from some other YouTube channel, because Kraven and Spidey didn't face off in the sewers in that story, and I would have made that clear. Her plans are partly interrupted by the appearance of Vermin, a man who was turned into a rat person by Captain America villain Arnim Zola, and has some degree of control over rats and other small animals. He considers the sewers to be his territory and angrily attacks the intruder, but she seems to have little difficulty dealing with him. Vin attempts to run away during the distraction, and when she turns her attention back to him, Vermin makes his own escape. Peter, in the meantime, arrives home to find his Spider-Man costume missing, and freaking out that Vin must have discovered his secret, he goes and borrows Daredevil's costume in order to confront Vin at the police station. Only he discovers Vin isn't there, and what's more, the police inform him that they've learned of a woman who claimed that she captured Spider-Man while she purchased some mutant growth hormone, a drug intended to give people superpowers, in order to boost Spidey's own powers. Yes, it seems our mysterious woman didn't find Vin to be enough of a threat, and assumes that his spider powers must come from some kind of spider serum or something, much the way Kraven seemed to eat a bunch of spiders in Last Hunt out of some hope of gaining the spider totem's blessing or something. It was a weird story. Spidey, still dressed as Daredevil, attempts to head for the sewers, running across the fleeing Vermin, who informs him where to find our mystery woman. I mean, he says underground, which seems like a very vague description of a very large place to me, but I guess it's good enough because it's not long before Spidey interrupts the most dangerous game reenactment, and Dare Spidey and Vin Spidey work together to fight off Raver the Hunter over there. I mean, seriously, she looks like she fell out of a Mad Max movie. Who dresses like that? Spidey even seems to attempt to try to convince her that she guessed correctly about Spider-Man, attempting to act like Vin is the real Spider-Man by throwing him a web shooter to use. In the end, Vermin ends up returning and attacks the woman once more with a vengeance, and Spidey takes the opportunity to get Vin out of the sewers and off to a hospital. In order to attempt to keep Vin from realizing that his roommate is Spider-Man, Spidey shows up to Vin's hospital room claiming that he uses multiple people people as decoys throughout the city in order to protect his secret identity. I have to say, Finn's response would be very appropriate if that were true. That would be a really effed up thing to do, Spidey. The comic ends with a reveal that the mystery woman got away from Vermin, maybe even killing him, though also definitely not because he'll show up in stories after this, followed by a second revelation that she is Kraven's daughter? Dun dun dun! Oh, wait, except everybody probably already guessed that from the fact that this story was called Kraven's First Hunt. Kind of a dead giveaway there, don't you think, Marvel? Was this supposed to be a twist revelation? Because if so, you blew it. Oh, and they also reveal that her name is Anna, so like, Anna Kravenoff, I guess. So there you go, in case you cared. There's also a brief bonus story where it's Harry Osborn's birthday and Pete shows up late to the party Harry threw for a bunch of rich friends because he was fighting the Trapster, which causes him to accidentally glue his own spider mask to his head. In a pathetic attempt to resolve the problem as quickly as possible, Pete wraps the mask around his head like it's a do-rag, which, like, yeah, it does look dumb on him, but I feel like people are a little excessively hateful of it. What are you guys trying to say about do-rags? Anyway, Harry ends up realizing that his rich friends suck and he'd rather hang out with Peter anyway, and I realize that it's time for the breakdown. I could definitely see criticism for this story falling on the fact that it relies so heavily on Kraven's last hunt to tell its story. It's basically attempting to simply rehash that story with some slight alteration to the characters. But despite that, this is probably the first story from the Brand New Day era I actually liked. Ironically, I feel it's the first that stands on its own. While everything from B&D before this all was simply build-up type stuff that was very much going, woo, look at all the stuff that we could potentially do eventually, this story just kind of told a story. And I guess that's fairly true as well with Guggenheim's previous story, the one about the Mayan death god, but I don't like that story, so screw it. So I'm giving this series a recommendation level of high. It's a nice, quick, fun read that is one of the only stories from this era I think is able to stand on its own, so what would it hurt to just check it out? The collected edition gets 1 post-apocalyptic makeup job, which is fairly middle of the road. I don't hate it. The collection is only 4 issues, though it does have that 8-page bonus comic on Harry's birthday and the entire script for Threeway Collision, which I guess is kind of cool. Not a super great collection, but all around, not bad. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. It's October now, so let's move on to some spooky stuff. Which mainly means Marvel Zombies again. I'm getting back to Marvel Zombies. So if you're excited about that, or you enjoyed this video, or you're just all around a super cool person, then be sure to hit the like and subscribe and all the YouTube buttons so you can be sure to be here next time, and I hope to see you then, right here, in the Comic Cave.